Oh, man, Donnie boy. Look who he's checking out here. We haven't talked about him yet today. It's been such a busy morning, so much happening here locally on KCMO. But I didn't want to lose sight of this as we get through the 8 o'clock hour on KCMO. NBC News reporting that Donald Trump is including somebody on his short list to be his vice president. Who might that be? Who might it be?
Little Marco.
Yeah, that's right. Little Marco Rubio, according to NBC News, is moving up Donald Trump's potential vice presidential pick. According to 6 people familiar with the presumptive Republican nominee's search for a running mate. NBC reports here Rubio is hardly alone in the field, as the cast of hopefuls for the job is large enough to fill an entire season of The Apprentice. Okay, that's very nice. I see what you did there. That's cute. That list also includes Elise Stefanik, Republican from New York, retired neurosurgeon Ben Carson, Tim Scott, also in the mix. You know, here's the thing. I've long believed that Trump should pick a woman. I think that makes sense for him. I think it softens him a little bit. I think it helps him. But if it's Marco Rubio or a shill like Kristi Noem out of South Dakota, then, give me little Marco. Hey, that's right. Little Marco. Little Marco. Give me little Marco.
Little Marco and Big D?
Yeah,
huh?
Little Marco and big hands, Big D. There you go. I like
How about that D, baby?
There we go. I like it. Give me more of that. I'll take more of that, please. I will take Marco Rubio over some of the people who have been on the short list for Donald Trump. Ideally, the answer would be someone like a Sarah Huckabee Sanders, which Bill O'Reilly has mentioned on this show. But I don't blame Trump for looking at Marco Rubio. I guess they buried the hatchet. By the way, neither guy would comment to NBC News on this. Neither campaign, neither camp. And if Donald Trump or anyone around him was not seriously considering little Marco, then they would quickly shoot this down. But they're not doing it. So that makes me think he's in play and that this report is not wrong. NBC News adds here, it's pretty clear from Trump's orbit that Rubio is very much in play. It makes sense because he checks almost every box if they can get past both being from Florida. The Constitution prohibits electors from voting for a president and a vice president from their own states. Now, that didn't stop Dick Cheney, a longtime Texan. He changed his residence to Wyoming back in 2000 so he could run with George W. Bush. So it's happened before. And then, of course, we got stuck with Liz Cheney out of Wyoming.
I was going to say, unintended consequences. Huh?
Yeah, seriously. Dick really, talk about D's screwing us here. I mean, Dick Cheney really hosed us on that one. We got stuck with Liz Cheney all these years later. But anyway, it's not clear, writes NBC, whether Rubio would be interested in moving to be vice president. And he has raised the Constitution as a possible impediment without fully ruling out the number 2 slot. Rubio said back in January, we're both from the same state, so that's probably not going to happen. But he didn't say no. He didn't say never. Donald Trump could easily move his residence around. I mean, he's got enough places that he owns,
That's what I wondered. And wouldn't it be easier for Donald to make the move?
Yeah, he could easily do that. So it makes, if he really wants Marco, it does make sense. And I'll get to here in a second why he might.
I'm sure he's been tweeting, but I haven't seen a tweet from Marco Rubio in a long time, and one just pops up on the timeline from 2 minutes ago.
Is that right?
Talking about Biden's economy.
Really? So little Marco making some waves on social media this morning, huh?
Little Marco.
Okay. All right. Now, why does Marco Rubio make some sense? Well, first off, Marco Rubio, before Donald Trump came along, was viewed as a rising star in the GOP. He was kind of the old school, more establishment Republican Party, but I think his eyes have opened up a little bit to embracing maybe some of what Donald Trump brought into the White House. And that's a good thing. On top of that, the guy is, of course, of Cuban descent. Now, there's a large contingency of Cuban Americans in Florida. Donald Trump is going to win Florida. He will blow out Joe Biden in Florida easily by 5 to 10 points. So it's not like he needs Marco Rubio to shore up the swing state of Florida with the Cuban population. He doesn't need that. But it would be a signal to the way the party is going, right? You think back to 2016, Trump needed Mike Pence to maybe shore up the evangelical vote, which was always a core constituency for the Republican Party. What are we seeing right now? You are seeing Hispanic Americans move from Democrat to Republican in massive numbers. In 2016, Hillary beat Donald Trump by 38 points with Hispanic voters. Donald Trump closed that gap to about 20 points in 2020. So Joe Biden, or the Democratic Party, when it comes to the White House ticket, lost 16, 17 points in Hispanic voters from 2016 to 2020. There are polls that we've talked about on the show that show Donald Trump leading Joe Biden with Hispanic voters. And I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I do know this. It shows a changing of conventional wisdom. There was this large belief, and it came to be under Barack Obama, that America would become a majority-minority country and Democrats would never lose again because they had black voters, they had the majority of Hispanic voters, and once America became a majority-minority country, they would win every nationwide election, at least for presidency. Well, that's changing, and it's changing very quickly. And Hispanic voters are in large part leading the way on this. They are trending every single election cycle over the last decade away from Democrats towards Republicans. And this would be one way to signal, not that you want to pander to voters, but it would be a way to signal that there is a changing of the guard here and that the parties themselves are shifting. And putting a guy like Marco Rubio on that ticket as Trump's number 2 is not the worst idea at all from that regard. I mean, I would take Marco over Sleepy Ben Carson. I mean, Ben Carson's a nice guy, but I don't really need him as a VP. Like, I would want somebody who has been in the trenches in the Senate that is, somewhat respected across the board, that Trump can also trust, who is also not going to overshadow him. And that's where Marco Rubio fits that billing perfectly. Someone who has been in D.C. and that Trump can also mold to fight in the trenches as he sees fit. So there's a lot there that potentially makes a lot of sense, and that at first I said to myself, no way, I don't like it. But then overnight I slept on it, along with feeding a baby and, not getting a lot of sleep last night. And I thought, you know what, I kind of like it. If we end up getting there, I kind of like it.
Little Marco.
That's right, little Marco in the mix.